are you, Indy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad that we're going to talk about something I have a lot of questions on. So I'll just introduce quickly. This conversation is about Ayurveda, Ayurvedic practices that we can utilize as we move from winter to spring, and how that might need to be like considered differently by individual, depending on your existing constitution. And my name is Tejal. I run Tejal Yoga. It's an online yoga space, and I'm joined by Indy of Indie Wellness, who is a yoga Ayurveda therapist and offers in-person and virtual consultations around Ayurveda therapy. And I just really want people to hear from you about what we can do with Ayurveda, how we can utilize it in our daily lives. Is it something we put on and take off, or is it something that we can think about all the time? And if you're interested in this conversation and everything we talk about, Indy offers a monthly workshop at Tejal Yoga on the fourth Saturday of every month. So we have our next one coming up at the end of March, where you'll learn even more specific tools and practices focused on this particular time of the year and the season that we're in. So I know there was a lot for the intro. Is there anything top of mind that you want to share before we just kind of dive in?
Mm, um, yeah, I think as like a overarching sense of like seasonality, I think we don't realize it, especially if we're not tapped into how the season's changing and how our bodies are reacting to it. I'm not making a connection really. I think we're affected by it more than we think. Um, and so generally trying to kind of, because I know at different parts of the year, like the two main transitions of the year are like the spring transition and then the autumn transition. They are the big ones.
Moving
Um,
from winter to spring, or just being?
yes, so moving from late winter to early spring, and then moving from kind of like early autumn to like early to late autumn to like the beginnings of winter.
Mm-hmm.
They're the big season changes, and kind of that is when we'll see the common things that crop up, and it's like, yeah, this is because of the season. That's why this is happening.
Yeah. Okay.
um,
No, I'm so glad you said that, because some transitions, some seasonal transitions feel like a natural extension of what is happening. We're just moving in that direction. Like when we go from fall to winter, I know for me, I just feel like, oh, I see things drying up. I see things getting quieter, in fact. And then I just think, oh, of course we're going to have winter next. But with winter to spring, it feels a little more abrupt. And I will also just address that climate change has got to be a part of this conversation around Ayurveda, because when we think about the environment that we're in and we apply Ayurvedic ideas and like consistency around changing of time and season, we're losing that consistency in our day-to-day
yes,
life, right?
yeah,
We're seeing these extreme weather events that then throw us off a little bit from maybe our manuals and our guidebooks that have so much ancient indigenous wisdom, but now we have to apply current context to try and make it work in a way that still is the goal of Ayurveda, which is harmonious lifestyle, right?
yeah.
So where do we start? You know?
Yeah, no, exactly. Like when you were just saying that just now, is like actually there's a, like you said, we have to apply current context to um ancient wisdom, but then also there's the other things of like the general understanding that our lives are not the same as our ancestors were then.
Right.
So the kind of like dominant doshas and the changes that we find in our bodies and the illnesses things are coming up, they're all quite common. There's a common thread and there's a common reason why. So there's that kind of general understanding of, okay, our lives are actually much faster now, and they're much less settled, and they're much less rigid with time. Like, our ancestors would have worked just with the sunrise and sunset. And now we
Yeah,
work
I mean, that
4
is
hours a
a
day.
huge distinction. That's a huge distinction. So I just want to share with everyone joining, you're welcome to drop your questions in on how to better handle this seasonal transition. And what I'm really feeling like is a liminal space, because it's not just the transition of the season. It might be the transition of your age, the decade, like what is going on astrologically for you. It's also going to be what is happening in your environment and with your connections with others, and who are you taking care of? What are the needs that are being asked of you? Like what's required of you at this time? So please drop your questions in, because there's no one size fits all application of Ayurveda to any one individual or any group of people. I'm really intrigued by what you mentioned, which is we no longer live our lives the way our ancestors did. One key example you gave was basically moving with a circadian rhythm. Like back in the day, however long ago, even if you don't know their names, our ancestors were waking up with the sun and going to bed at sundown, or like winding down right around then. And what I've noticed is living on the East Coast for a very long time, my active hours were so much later than they are on the West Coast. And I feel like that's really intriguing, but it's also creates an inconsistency. So that's one thing just environmentally I've noticed based on my location. But I wanted to ask you, what's another distinction about the way we live our lives today that is just markedly different from what might be referenced in like historical Ayurveda rituals and the way our ancestors lived their lives?
Yeah, there's so many things. The two that are coming to my mind right now is like um, definitely the food. So food and food quality is very, very different. So, obviously, like, depending on how far back you want to go, like, there was the ability to grow food. It was fertile soil. People knew how to tend to the land. Right now, we don't have that connection,
Mm.
especially if we're living in cities. We don't have that connection to tend to the land like our ancestors might have. And food quality, obviously, like, there's a lot of import export of food across the world. So the globalization of food and how it's sent across the world, regardless of the season. So there's no regard for any kind of season, really, in the food, in some of the foods that are available to us. I mean, yeah, I know in the UK for sure, some supermarkets will have a section that's like best in season type thing, but that's about as far as we go.
Right. And
So,
also we've been socialized, like it's become so custom that we can access anything from the grocery store whenever we want. Even I see it at farmers markets, like sometimes packaged products are there at the farmers market stands now. And even when we do have best in season, or they're like what's locally available now, I don't necessarily know what to do with that. Like I know the
mm,
fall vegetables and like root vegetables and everything are really important for that time, but I'm like, I wouldn't know what to do with a gourd necessarily. Like, I don't know, you know.
yeah, we don't get educated on any of that. Like, we don't get told that, oh, this is what we could do, or like, we would have an abundance of this at this time of the year, or that kind of thing. But yeah, there's just no education around nourishing ourselves really ever at any point of our schooling or anything like that. Nothing. Um, and like the other thing is like if it's not like the food, the difference of food, it's the difference of the way kind of like industrialization has changed the way we live. Things are more convenient. Things are more fast. Things are just we have become habitualized into having things now, and yeah, so there's just not really a grounding point for us anymore.
Okay, I have a question for you about with your clientele. Are you seeing more like what are you seeing show up? Is it more skin stuff? Is it more internal stuff? Is it more inflammation? Um, I know that's a big generalization, but if you could just talk about some of the top concerns people are having, I think that
Hmm.
would be helpful because it's relatable.
Yeah, there's definitely a thread, as is expected. So there's a lot of so going from like when I think there's physical discomfort, but the roots are always not physical. The root causes come from something that's more mental or emotional.
Mm.
That's one thread. So many of the kind of illnesses or chronic illnesses or discomfort that we're experiencing is coming from an emotional or mental source, mostly. That will result in things like mostly digestive issues, really common. things that are to do with like hormonal imbalance, especially if you're someone who menstruates, um, and then things to do with heat or inflammation. So inflammatory conditions, and you're just like, I don't know what this is.
Mm.
And they're usually down to when, the heat's been pushed into a place it doesn't want to be in or shouldn't be in. And there's like, yeah, and the root cause is always things are too fast. Things are too, they just keep going, going, going. You're not stopping. You're not looking after yourself. You're not paying attention.
Where does the heat come from? Does it come from environment? Does it come from food? Does it come from activity?
All of that.
Okay.
It can come
You
from
mentioned,
any combination.
yeah, and you mentioned like there's heat in the body, which we're all going to have some kind of heat generated from some source. And you're saying when the heat gets pushed into a place it doesn't want to go, then we're going to experience a discomfort, and that's the effect, right? So the cause is typically mental or emotional, but the effect outcome is a physical sign that alerts us that we have more to address than just the physical topical treatment. That is the distinction between Western versus Eastern, right? Western medicine is going to be acute. It treats what is in front of you, but it does not go back to the
Mm.
root necessarily. So you get all this idea around, oh, we have a holistic center. I still find it very prescriptive.
Yeah, because it's like it becomes like the box ticking exercise then,
Yeah.
because it's not
Yeah.
as personalized as we'd like. And like, and not to say that, all our root causes are mental and emotional, they're not. Some people have like things that are from childhood and they've just never gone away and that kind of thing. Things are genetic. So, there's also that to take in consideration as well. Things are genetic or from childhood.
Yeah.
How can we resolve it as an adult? Um, and when something is like that deeply embedded in your body, it takes a much longer time to
Oh,
overcome.
sure. Oh, sure. It's becomes complex, like
Yeah.
in a different way. We have a question in the chat, which, oh my gosh, I love it. So thank you for putting it in. Mon Chat on 13 says, I've been doing a lot of hibernating lately. I've not wanted to talk to too many people, and I've just wanted to be by myself. How do I transmute this energy to welcome in the wakefulness of spring? So you go first.
Yeah.
I have some thoughts, but you go
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think because I think many of us struggle with it in different ways. I think it's like taking small steps. So if you're someone who spends a lot of time inside, get outside first. Or open the windows, let the air in. Get outside first, have small walks, and of course you'll see people around. But that's like the kind of way of getting out. Like get out into nature, ideally. Look around,
Yeah.
take it in, and as well as this, like you can add little cues through like your foods, like gently, very gently, just like what will give me more energy, what will wake me up, what will kind of gently cleanse this kind of heavy layer of winter that I need to shed.
Mhm.
So things, that like citrus things, black peppers, spicy things, pungent things.
And
Um,
so I love that you're starting to get a little more like giving the direction on what you can take in that can help move you into that space. You offer consultations on that. You offer like herb treatment on that. You offer physical body treatments on that. So I think this is a great moment to say, when you need the direction for that, find a skilled Ayurvedic therapist and talk to them, and then set up a schedule with them where you can touch base so you can have a protocol assigned to you, work on it, ask your questions as it's getting integrated, and then come back for a follow-up, which we do offer at Tejal Yoga. We do offer first-time Ayurvedic consultations with Indie, and then follow-ups with WhatsApp support throughout that time. So I really love that you said that. And then my 2 cents on that for Monchat on 13 is I'm going to just ask the most basic thing, which, you know, take it or leave it. But my question to you is why? Why are we looking to transmute our hibernative energy, our inward energy right now? Is it just because the pressure of spring? Is it just because the circumstance of spring? Or is there an actual embodied desire that's a full body yes, I want to move in this direction. Because we have these parts of ourselves. We can talk about the koshas, we can talk about different doshas that are um, more elevated or like more in front than the others. And we can look at that and kind of assess, is it the moment? Like, is it actually the moment, or am I applying some other need that's not my own into this thought that's telling me I need to be more extroverted, I need to be more external, I need to be more engaged with others? And let me tell you why I really want us to think about why is because we live in hustle culture. We were raised, if you're a person of the global majority and you have any kind of migration patterns, then I can speak to that because my family, my parents moved from Gujarat and raised me in Detroit, Michigan. And I learned to survive, right? To do everything I needed to survive, often to mask what I was feeling, often to adapt in ways that weren't inherently truthful to me and my nature. And as I get older, I'm still peeling back those layers and I'm still looking at the why. Because can I tell you, I always want to be resting. Like, I just want to rest. So my motto in life is like, how can I find rest in every moment? If I'm actually doing something where I feel like that is totally inaccessible and out the window, it doesn't feel authentic to me, and I'm going to reassess. So let's not look at winter to spring as a requirement to be more external and extroverted, but an invitation. And sometimes there's an opening there for that to happen. And then we find the support we need. But regardless of where you're at, whether you want to stay in a like closed hibernative space, regardless of if you're like really out there, Rajasic, like going at it, indie is still available. Like, your Ayurvedic therapists are still available to you to guide you through that process, because these questions are really deeply rooted in childhood, intergenerational history, environmental stuff. Are our basic needs being met? So what is coming up in the moment, and what are we carrying from so much of our history into
Yeah,
the
and there's
moment?
also like the spring doesn't like the seasons don't take a day to change. There's weeks, so we have time. So yeah, it's definitely a process. It goes through a process of its own. It's so we have the time to do it in our own time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna say that we're gonna wrap up shortly. So if you have a question, you can just like drop it in right now. And then before we go to check the questions, I want to share that your next workshop is actually right after the equinox, isn't it? So it's right after winter into spring. And I can't remember the date, but I probably should. Do you have the date?
Well, for the workshop,
Yeah,
22nd.
March 22nd. We always do it on Saturdays for us. And that workshop is going to invite you into practices to guide the transition into spring. So typically the workshop focuses on either on body, mind, or breath. And can you speak more to what we're talking about in March?
Yeah, so in March we're looking at breath. And so this is like another entryway for you to build your energy and build warmth in the body to help melt away stagnation, basically, essentially. So there's a couple of kind of pranayama techniques that we can work with to help us do that. And that's something you can build as like a short-term practice for you. Because if you are someone who wants to work more with the seasons and are feeling certain things, just you want to help yourself out of this cocoon, um, pranayama can really be supportive in that time. And it can be a short-term thing, for a few weeks, a couple of months, that's fine. And you will find that you'll need different things at different times of the year. So this is the thing that I would say, these are the pranayama practices you want at this time of year.
Yes. Okay. Okay, first of all, the energy in this space is like phenomenal. So thank you all for being here. And we do have two more questions, which I want to take. And Indy, let's try and do it in under 5 minutes, just so we're really mindful of time and what's happening. But we know where to find each other. So you all know where to find us on our handles and ask those questions. Ophelia Rex, hi. They say the small amount of Ayurveda treatment I've done in the past has been in person. Is there any difference in doing Ayurveda workshop online/virtually versus in-person treatment? Great question.
Yeah. So, for example, so the difference with like the workshop that I do, it is more generalized to help, it's things that anyone can do, but there might be some practices where I will state it's not ideal for if you're suffering with this or that and the other. So it depends on what time and where you are where you are with it. But the whole point of Ayurveda, there's a lot of self kind of support tools. So it's about let's build these in ourselves that we can do for ourselves before we get to the point of disease.
Mm.
And there's so much prevention we can have. And these kind of tools in the workshops are really ideal for you to just um, like weave them into your daily routines and things like that. Whereas in person, obviously you'll get a more tailored approach. Even online, it can be very tailored.
Right.
The only difference is like, that you're not doing like a pulse check, for example. But there are certain things that we can pick up on, like any good practitioner will be able to pick up on things you do and don't say and what they mean.
I love that you said that because of course there's value to both. Like otherwise Stage Yoga online wouldn't even exist, right? Like we just wouldn't even do online anything. But I love that you said that in person we want to know that there are things you're not going to be able to do with someone. I mean, virtually in a consultation, you're not going to have some of the in-person practices. So you won't be able to do a pulse check, but you will be able to do a tongue check, right? And so there are ways that it works. It definitely works. And I think the beautiful thing is to come in with this abundance mindset. Like, yes, of course, you can find an Ayurvedic therapist in person that you can go see. And it might be a little bit of a drive. Fine. But the beauty of us being complex, unique, individual human beings is that energetically, you're not going to match with everybody. And so this isn't a wonderful option if you find that the energy you're feeling in the space with Indie is something you want to explore more as your therapist. And then you have that opportunity because does everybody know Indie is in the UK? So you're not going to easily drive over to Indie. It's like literally across the pond and in Brighton, no less. So that's why we are so lucky that you're able to do this work in a really unique way online. Because of course, even I could find someone in person to talk to. That's no problem. But I see the value of being able to connect with multiple people or even a few people that I know the connection is really going to work for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have one more question. We're just going to take one more question. Um, Preach to Birds, Allison, hi, has said, I have found myself sick more often this year and last. Yes, I know. And I wonder if you have a general multi-doshic suggestion for preventative care when transitioning from winter into spring. So I'm just going to pause on that because what I'm realizing is that the community that's already in practice online with us outside of Instagram is warm. Like we're at a level where we understand these terms of multi-doshic. We understand what a pulse check is in terms of Ayurvedic practices. We understand what a tongue check is. So if these things are feeling a little bit like unknown to you, the workshop is a great start. It's a great way to ask your questions in a group setting and build the awareness. And Indie offers lecture and presentation, so you're getting a lot of education in the workshop as well. But okay, back to Allison's question. General multi-doshic suggestion for preventative care when transitioning.
So if you find it, so it sounds like maybe you're getting ill every late winter to spring. Sounds like that transition is particularly difficult. So like getting sick at a transition is basically your surefire sign telling you that your body is struggling with it. So if you know that's going to be the case, start early. And so like that's all. It's kind of like the most general approach I would say is kind of start thinking about if you're thinking about the energy of winter, it's heavy, dense, stagnant. You want to basically break it up and melt it.
Ooh.
What can you do to do that? So like warming foods, warm liquids, things like saunas and steam rooms. Saunas and steam rooms, there is a big difference between them. I'm not going to go into it now, but there is a big difference of who should be using either one. Those kinds of practices, rituals, like warming breath, getting outside, and movement. Movement is such a massive one in late winter, spring. So just warming up the body and bringing heat. But obviously, you will know if someone is, suffering from an inflammatory condition of any kind, you don't want to overdo it. So that's the kind of way I would approach it, to think
Oh my
about it
God.
through your foods, movement, things like that.
I think that's so clever and also really, really interesting. I did not think about that. I'm dropping a link in the chat so people can learn more. I don't even know if it's clickable through IG Live. But we also had one more comment, and I just want to take that comment. It's from our member student, Stephen, Pillon24. I'm so interested, especially since turning 70, but feel overwhelmed as to how to get started. And so I'm just going to tell you the funnel. Thank you for joining today. This is the start. Come to the workshop. As a member at Tejal Yoga, you get access to the workshops for the current month and the prior 3 months. So if you were to join as a Tejal Yoga member right now, this Friday, you're going to get access to the Ayurveda workshops with Indie that will walk you through winter. Like, what did we do for body, mind, and breath for winter practices? And if you're still struggling with winter, this is a great moment to consider joining as a member and then getting access to all that wisdom. Then every month, you're going to get access to a new workshop, plus you'll have the prior 3 months available for reference. So that's a
And
great way.
resources.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to access the workshop wisdom that you have. And then all members get a discount to consultations with you. So we really want to encourage people to go that route with yoga and the sibling science, which is Ayurveda, to just bring that holistic, um, lens into our lives. The one that's not just about treating what's in front of us, it's about treating what's within us. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, thank you so much, Indy. Any last
Oh, thanks
moment,
so much.
like any last thoughts, anything? I feel like we have to do this again because this is really juicy.
Yeah, just I think the more we do it, the more we practice it, the more we kind of live it, is like where it will start to become easy. Just little by little. And that is exactly how I've worked with anyone I've ever worked with, little by little. Like it might feel overwhelming at the beginning, but like you don't have to do it all straight away.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, little by little, small little steps to make those changes, and then they'll become kind of second thought, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Like, let's think about it this way. Final thought. If you're hungry and you scarf down the food in front of you, you're probably going to experience discomfort after, indigestion, bloating, gas, whatever, your heartburn. If you're hungry and you take bites of your meal and you digest it slowly, eventually your plate will be clear, your belly will be full, you'll get what you've needed, and you'll be able to move into the rest of your day sated, satisfied, like prepared and ready. So
mm,
same with Ayurveda. Let's take our bite-size practices and digest them. And then eventually, everything that was in front of us, all that beautiful information, will be within us.
yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you so, so much. We're going to post this
No worries.
conversation later this week. And then everyone, please join the workshops and think about a consultation with Indy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.